And forgive yourself for your past failures and just learn from it. Try something different than what you've done before. Get ongoing support. Find a buddy. Other people have mentioned that before. There's a lot, now with the internet, there's a lot of places you can get support that you used to not be able to before the internet. Go on the low-carb forums. Read about it. Ask for help. Find yourself an internet buddy. Make a commitment to help to yourself and share that with someone else. And oftentimes, if you make a commitment to another person, you're more likely to keep your word to them than you are to yourself. So use that. That's a part of what works with AA so well, is that you have a sponsor. You have someone you can call when you're in trouble. And this one is very important, and this is what a lot of people I don't think do. Eat properly to support a healthy blood sugar. You have to have enough protein, and you want to have fat so you can have appetite control and satiety. There is nothing worse than trying to fix your behavior when your body's all riled up and your blood sugar is very unstable. So make sure that's what you're doing. Control the quality and quantity of carbohydrates. It is not just the quality. We each have our own level of carb tolerance as far as quantity, and that has to be addressed too. Eat protein regularly and do not skip meals. Learn to cope with stress. Exercise in some of the research done in rats, I couldn't find this in humans, but they found out in rats that it does increase dopamine levels, and it can actually increase the number of dopamine receptors, which for those of us who may have been born with a lower number of dopamine receptors, that's very important. And if exercise will do that, that's helpful. Avoid situations or people who are not supportive. I mean, if you're getting off alcohol, you don't still go Friday night with all your friends to the local bar. That is not something you're going to do. So you want to hang around with people who are going to support you in order to deal with your carb addiction and to get your health back. Seek comfort from something other than food. I know I like to buy jewelry, so I mean, that's what I do. And that's why I like to come on these cruises, because, you know, there's all these jewelry stores. So seek comfort from something other than food. Recognizing that there is a Pavlovian response that can continue. But the mere thought of your addictive food does not mean that you have to have it. The thoughts will stop when you no longer give in to the thought. You can erase the connection between the stimulus and the response. Just the way you created it, you can erase it. I'll give you a short story about my experience quitting smoking. I used to smoke almost 2 packs a day. It was in 1985, and I had quit many times before, but in 1985 I quit for good. And this time it was really effortless. I just put the cigarettes down and I didn't pick them up again. I'd already obviously been doing low carb most of the time, but I started exercising, which really helped a lot. But when I began to realize how much of my habit was a behavioral thing, a Pavlovian response, was after a few days of being at home. I quit smoking when I was on a trip. And I came back, and the phone rang. And on the way to the phone, I found myself looking for my cigarettes, matches, and ashtray. Now, I hadn't smoked in 4 or 5 days. And yet here I was looking for my paraphernalia. I mean, I was like Pavlov's dog. The bell rang, and I started looking for my smoking paraphernalia. And I can remember stopping in the middle of the living room, recognizing what that was. And I was thinking, why am I thinking this? I've given up cigarettes. And I could put myself through the mental process of saying, I could talk myself into failure if I gave this one thought, which was simply a Pavlovian response, very much power, meaning, well, I shouldn't have thought of this. The fact that I thought of this means I'm probably not going to be able to quit, and I'm probably going to have to go through this again. Or I could recognize it for what it was. It was nothing but a stimulus and response. And so that's what I did. And I can remember saying to myself, so why don't you just go answer the phone and talk? And I realized that within a few seconds you'll be involved in the conversation, and I'm not going to remember that I'm not smoking. Most of that smoking was totally unconscious anyway. But I was at a crossroads when I interpreted how I thought about just having the idea of smoking. So you may get over your withdrawal and be back on track in the first week of your carb restriction again. But you may still have some of those thoughts pop into your head because you just need to give yourself a chance to erase those connections. So do that. If you have to remember my story, and that was 1985, and I still very clearly remember it because I could have taken a different road and started smoking again, and I didn't. So I'll end here with a quote from Nora Volkow. She is the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse. And she's commenting on the latest recent research that has been published on the controversy about food and addiction states. And she says the data is so overwhelming the field has to accept it. We find tremendous overlap between drugs in the brain and food in the brain. She was interviewed 2 weeks ago, Sunday, before this one, on 60 Minutes. And she talked about food addiction then and about how clear the research is now that there's all the imaging studies that were done on the areas of the brain that really will light up with people and light up more with people and respond more with people who are overweight as compared to normal subjects. So I hope I hope you find the information useful so that you can maybe go on and get over your addiction the way I have. There's also a connection that was very commonly talked about in food addiction, other addictions, and schizophrenia. And the dopamine pleasure circuit also involved in schizophrenia, which I found interesting. And I can think back to a lot of our schizophrenic patients we had at the Atkins Center, and they were chain smokers, and they had the most horrendous diets. And so there's still a lot more, hopefully, that we'll uncover here. But I do think that it's important for people to know that there is a physiologic reason often why they can get themselves off track. And it's that first time back on the carbs that you really don't want to let yourself do.